Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Damien with Rosieside Farm. It is July the 17th in Zone 7B. We're here at Rosieside Farm, and it's time for our market garden update. First thing, we've just had a ton of rain, and it's time to get the weed whacker out and get on the borders here of the market garden. Weeds starting to be overgrown, but also our produce is growing. So here at the volunteered cherry, not cherry tomatoes, but ground cherries. I've made a decision. I've talked about it for a little bit. I'm leaving these ground cherries, those here. And I think all of these right here are coming out, and they're coming out today. I'm just gonna pull them out. They're crowding on my tomatoes. There's no way that I'm gonna need this many ground cherries. We have ground cherry volunteers on the other side of the garden. They're everywhere, so I just don't need them. I think I'm gonna pull these up, and I'm gonna put some cucumbers here and just let them grow on the ground. We did that last year. Everything worked out fine. So, that's a project for today or tomorrow. Still have a bunch of green tomatoes on the vines. We're starting to get some that are ripening. I'm starting to turn colors. So what we have found, though, is we planted a bunch of beefsteak, which we were under the impression were red beefsteak. And apparently, if you see down there, they're yellow. So it's another one right there. So it seems to be a yellow variety of beefsteak tomato. If it's even a beefsteak, it could have been mislabeled. There's another one down in there. So we have a bunch of yellow tomatoes. This section, kind of a disaster now, our old squash and zucchini. And these tomatillos that, gosh, I just don't know when tomatillos are ready to pick. There are a few there that that are kind of busted out of their shell, which I'd assume they're probably ready to pick. So we're going to give that a shot, and I'll have that for our next market. Some laying on the ground. I know that ground cherries are like that. You pick them up off the ground. But these squash plants are looking pretty decent here. And I see two squash over there, so we'll let them live out their life here. I'm not in a hurry to put anything in this patch. But we've got some squash in there. Some flowers are looking good. So we're going to let them go. One of our more recent plantings of tomatoes, these are Brandywine, Green Zebras, maybe some Black Krim. I forgot. I gotta go look at my videos again, and I gotta tie some up. They're falling. Gotta tie them up to the trellis. And this is the first time I put some lettuce in the ground and really forgot about it, and put them in the shade here to keep them out of the heat, and they're doing pretty well. So I'll keep you updated on that. To the end of our row, we start getting into our eggplants. So we picked a few eggplants, a couple of eggplant, cooked one, sold one. Our black beauties, and there's some eggplant on the plant here. If I can find some, those are the ones I picked off the other day. Oh, here's it's hard to see, but got one growing there. And the white eggplant are really starting to take off. They're not white yet, though. So we have them down here. So the black start out black, and gosh, I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but Japanese beetles are insane this year. They're on everything. But these white eggplants, I think we're gonna have a bunch of eggplant here not too long, hopefully for next week's market. The big healthy eggplant, lots of flowers, lots of fruit. There's pollinator bees. There's bees everywhere. See if I can get one on camera. I don't know if it did or not. So heading down, and we have our one volunteer tomato plant that I haven't done anything to. Tied it up at one point, but guys, there has to be 30 tomatoes on this plant. We're just gonna let it go. I'm letting it go. I'm not messing with it. Don't have time for it. Into a few more eggplant. This one. Look at these big. What do we got here? Aphid stuff. So we don't spray, so we're gonna have We're gonna have bug problems. It's gonna happen. Down to our most recent succession of planting. This is the stuff that didn't sell as plant starts that we stuck in the ground. We have some peppers, some eggplant, and some tomatoes. One tomato that, I don't know what happened to that sucker. But we did get a bunch of rain and a bunch of heat. So some things are probably going to thrive. Some things are going to not do so well. You'll notice our giant weeds. Thank God for this weed fabric, because if we didn't have it and I was trying to do this in wood chips, I can only imagine the weed pressure we'd have. For this past week's market, I probably picked a bushel of peppers. So these are our Lady Bells, and we go up our California Wonders, our Red Knights, our Chocolate Beauties. All of those things are growing like crazy. Peppers aren't changing colors though. So they're all being sold as green peppers right now, but they're huge. They're full size. This is our first row of cucumbers that we planted, and they're not looking great anymore. Now, we picked a large number of cucumbers off of these, so they have produced. But it seems like they died back a little sooner than they have in the past. So who knows if it's bugs, temperature, water. But like, this is odd because I don't see any cucumbers ready to pick, and usually you can't come out here without finding half a dozen to pick. Of course, you know, cucumbers, they could be hiding, but I don't see any. So I'm putting more cucumbers in the ground today. I started some seeds. They're very small, but I'm starting them. Over here, we've already harvested a few patty pans. That's our patty pan squash. I'm already seeing the squash bug. The squash bug. Eggs. There are bees everywhere. And there's more patty pans starting. But our jungle of kind of miscellaneous squash, our jungle of weeds, this is where I stuck, Hubbard squash and crookneck squash and zucchini and all that stuff. Just threw some of them in the ground, hoping they'll just take off and take over. This might as well be called a weed garden right here. This little section that had some volunteer tomatoes that are, putting off tomatoes. Don't need the space right now, not messing with it. Too much going on. So jumping over to another tomato row or trellis. Again, these were planted just a tad later than the rest of them. And we have some tumbler tomatoes here, which are ready to pick. This week at the market, we had some tomatoes, not many. All these are coming out. All these yellow tomatoes, like there's tomatoes on the vine, but they've got to come out. They're not easy to pick. They wouldn't be easy to present to sell because they're so small, those little currant tomatoes. So they're coming out. And I rooted some beef steaks off of cuttings that I might stick there, see if we have enough time for them to produce something eventually. Our white tomatoes, look at the size of these tomatoes. It's absolutely ridiculous. The problem is all these, we have white tomatoes, we have pineapple tomatoes, which can produce up to a 2-pound tomato. The problem is getting a tomato to 2 pounds and not having it crack or scar or have bug pressure, I found is a little difficult. So I think next year, these are our beef steak that turned out being yellow. I think next year I'm going to go with more of a medium-sized tomato that I can get off the vine and get to the market and have them look nice and pretty. See, there we go, there's some scarring here. So when that happens, knock it on the fence, throw it in the pig pen. They'll find it, get themselves a nice little snack. But we've got tomatoes, and I've always been hesitant to do the big prune, but I'm doing the big prune next year. Tomatoes down here, which hopefully we'll have a bunch of baskets to sell at next week's market. We got the pigs. They heard me throw something. They're coming to look. So that's one permaculture technique that we use, is like you put the garden next to the animals, so anytime you have any waste, you can throw it and it doesn't go to waste. So our jungle of tomatoes, our tomatoes that didn't do well in the storm, you know, falling down, but they're just going to stay falling down. Don't have time or the desire to fix them, but we've got tomatoes ready to pick. It's just going to be a little difficult. Jalapenos, we picked a ton of jalapenos. A very consistent producer. The black crims, again, we sold some of those, but those heirloom tomatoes, those old heirlooms, it's tough to get them to what they should look like at a farmer's market, or what people say they should look like at a farmer's market. Here are those pineapple, I mean, it's a 2-pound tomato. Hopefully it gets ripe and the correct color before it gets damaged, before, you know, something happens to it. Over here, our okra, we picked a ton of okra. I picked okra yesterday before the market, and this is the size we have to pick it at right here. Because I was out here yesterday and picked every okra off. And look at this thing. I mean, maybe that's good, but it's really pushing it. So looks like I got to come through, and gosh, there's a ton of okra here. I mean, I picked every single piece of okra off of this thing yesterday. There's a ton out here today. Got to go and get it off. Our peppers, this is the row I picked the majority of the peppers off of. I'm telling you, it was a bushel, easily a bushel of peppers. Sold real well on Saturday, didn't sell as well on Sunday. Sunday's market was a rainy day, but one of our better markets, at the smaller market we go to, sold a bunch of flowers, a bunch of bouquets. My wife makes some beautiful bouquets. And trellises that are failing with decent tomatoes on them. So here our tomatillo patch. I'm going to go through and attempt to harvest some tomatillos and then cook them. You know, look up a recipe, cook them, so when people ask me questions, I'll have some answers for them at the farmer's market. But our volunteer tomatoes mixed in with green beans everywhere, and another row of cucumbers, which I need to produce. I need these suckers to produce. I got marigolds here that are growing a lot bigger than I thought marigolds grow. So we could have a cucumber problem, because I don't see any cucumbers here either. Usually, gosh bless, I mean, you come out to get cucumbers and, I mean, there's a little guy there, which will be a cucumber, if I can get that leaf out of the way, which will be a sellable cucumber, but usually, I mean, we'll have 10 plus, oh, here we go, some cucumbers down here. So I'm gonna pick these now. Oh, here we go, some cucumbers. So I'm gonna pick these now. We'll eat them, because hopefully it'll stimulate some growth. And by the weekend, today's Monday, so by Friday night, when I do a lot of the picking for our weekend markets, we'll have more cucumbers. But I'll talk to my wife. These marigolds might have to be pulled out. We really don't use them for anything. I had some empty space. I asked her if she had flowers that she didn't have a spot for, so she gave me these marigolds. I mean, that's a pretty nice flower. I picked a few cucumbers. You know what? I like cucumbers, but so do they. So turning produce into pork. There's another cucumber over there. Don't want to make this a cucumber harvesting video, but if you don't pick them, the plant doesn't produce more. So going through the jungle, more volunteer tomatoes. These are paste tomatoes. More green beans, which I thought would be producing by now. I really don't grow green beans. I just stuck them in there. You know, I had seeds, so I threw them in, and we'll see what comes of it. These Japanese beetles are terrible. They're everywhere. My wife put a few beetle bags out. which are said to attract more. Some people say don't do it. We do it, and then feed them to our chickens. So we get kind of some free chicken feed out of this. But here's some of these peppers. I mean, some of these peppers had 6, 7 peppers on a little plant. So, we pick some off, and hopefully that'll relieve some stress of the plant, so they can start to ripen and turn color. So that's our update for this week. Got another 2 markets coming up this weekend. Hopefully we'll have a bunch of tomatoes. That's what people want. Be able to make a decent profit here at our markets. And I appreciate you guys coming along this update. We'll see you next week.